Okay, welcome back to our coverage here. The swearing ceremony for Prime Minister Andrew Holness, and 4 ministers, as we announced earlier, will be sworn in. Dr. Horace Chang, Dr. Nigel Clark, Dr. Christopher Tufton, and Kamina Johnson-Smith. And earlier, before we went to the break, we were talking about the issue of Deputy Prime Minister. It's not a constitutional position. It's generally done.
It's in the gift of the Prime Minister. And I was making reference to former Prime Minister Hugh Shearer. He served as Prime Minister from mid-1967 to February 1972. When the JLP returned to office in 1980, he was appointed Deputy to Prime Minister Siaga. And he served as Deputy Prime Minister until 1983. I think after the 83 election, I don't think he was reappointed Deputy Prime Minister. He took on some added responsibilities in terms of foreign affairs and foreign trade and some other issues, but I don't think he was reappointed Deputy Prime Minister. I don't recall whether Donald Sangster was actually deputy to Sir Alexander early in that term, that first term in independence.
To 67.
Right, but he quickly became acting Prime Minister.
Right, because that's Bustamante's health.
Yes, Bustamante, I think, got a stroke early in his term, and Donald Sangster became acting Prime Minister. I don't know whether he was officially deputy up to that point.
Right.
So the deputies that we have had, for sure, would be David Core, P.J. Pattison, Hugh Shearer, Seymour Mullings, and Ken Baugh up to this point.
And now Horace Chang.
Right.
Also, we had talked a bit about the issue of corruption, and let's hear a bit of what the Prime Minister said as he made his first speech as Prime Minister.
A member of the government must be an active agent for the stronger recovery of our economy and society. Every member of the government must understand that this mandate is not about them. It is about the people. No princes or princesses were elected. You have no divine right or entitlement. We are all servants of the public.
Okay. No princesses or princes. A direct charge to his persons. As we know, quite a lot of persons, somehow when they get into office and the trappings of the office, there is one particular individual in the previous administration which comes to mind that, you know, it's somehow, I don't know if it's the water they drink as ministers or ministers of state. It just
it can become quite heady. And when you have persons doing a number of things for you that normally you'd have had to be doing for yourself, and suddenly you have someone at your beck and call, it can get to, like I said, it can get quite heady, and therefore it's important for them to understand the context. This time, I think Mr. Holness said Mr. Golding had said he was a chief servant. I think Mr. Holness said he was
chief steward.
Chief steward. But he also, in terms of being more specific in terms of some of the proposals, he was talking about strengthening the anti-corruption infrastructure, quote unquote.
Right, and he mentioned there was some need to complete the legislative framework to enable or to strengthen the anti-corruption framework.
Yes.
One of the things, though, which also struck me, and I'm reminded by someone who sent me a message just now, that the Prime Minister did not mention crime. Crime is still a problem.
Yes, it's been off the front burner during the election campaign and has been sort of overtaken in terms of public consciousness by COVID. And so sometimes we have to deliberately take a look at the figures, particularly murder, because that continues to be a problem. And whoever takes the charge of the portfolio, and one suspects that Dr. Chang will continue to be the Minister of National Security, but we'll see. We have heard about Deputy Prime Minister. That will continue to be an important task for the new administration, and certainly increased use of technology, enhanced legislation where necessary, all the things that need to be done to improve and enhance the security of the Jamaican people, and everybody will have to be given important attention.
Indeed, and one of the things that we await for the new security minister and the new administration is, will they continue with the policy of the states of emergency? Seemingly popular, polls indicate that there's broad support for them. The government in the previous term had been hammered a lot, particularly by the opposition, that was not the best use of states of emergency. That was not the best tool to solve crime.
The Prime Minister might have used the opportunity to perhaps speak of added boots on the ground, which is something that has been spoken about quite a bit over the years, that we do not have in terms of the saturation on the ground of police personnel in particular, that we are far below where we need to be. And perhaps if you're going to continue using those kinds of special measures, you certainly can't continue to exhaust the police and military personnel that you currently have. You're going to have more, along with, of course, the enhanced use of technology. But you cannot beat the use or beat the application of more boots on the ground, certainly in the foreseeable future.
But that's a seeming intractable problem, because the manning levels for the JCF are about 9,500, excluding the district constables, and we are often told we need to be closer to 11,500 or about 12,000.
Yes.
So there's about a 2,000, 2,500 man deficit, and
remember the attrition rate is quite high.
Yeah, the attractiveness, they need to be attracting like 3 times as many as leave each year in order for the numbers to actually climb. Right now they're barely replenishing what they're losing.
Yes, and well, if you're talking about increasing employment, I know that a lot of that employment is expected to be in the private sector, but this is one area in which public sector employment is really urgently needed in terms of the enhanced security, having more boots on the ground, as I said, increasing the recruitment.
One issue also, and General, I think, tackled Floyd Morris on it, the absence of the opposition leader.
Yes.
I've been seeing some chatter online and persons saying he should have been there at this function.
It has become the tradition for the leader of the opposition or the head of the opposition party to be at this occasion. And so I'm not surprised that there are questions being asked in this instance about his absence. Clearly, it's not one of the regular swearing-in ceremonies, but in terms of the order of precedence and who you would expect to be there, then obviously the leader of the opposition would be expected to be there. As in fact, you saw him having a representative there. Floyd Morris sought to explain to Janela that he is engaged in some very important and critical consultations now to quickly resolve the need that the opposition has to have key persons in position,
right,
so that they can take on their responsibilities.
And he would have been opposition leader up to 3 o'clock or 3:05
Yes.
when the Prime Minister was...
Is it that they are caucusing to determine quickly who will be the new leader of the opposition, so that the Governor General can be informed,
right,
maybe by the end of the day? I don't know.
Okay.
We hadn't gotten wind of that,
right,
for example.
Right. So somebody has said just wanted the absence of the opposition leader is pretty disrespectful, but there are obviously some persons who are very concerned and upset that Dr. Phillips wasn't at the swearing-in ceremony.
I think it's also important, though, we may not know at the moment whether he and Prime Minister Holness had a conversation prior to.
Sure.
So,
okay, and we perhaps will hear some more about that. But we're going to break our coverage now, and we will have much more on the story, the swearing-in ceremony, and the appointment of the ministers in Primetime News. But that's where we're going to leave it. You know, on behalf of Earl Moxon, my colleague, and all of the news and production teams, thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.